death and destruction. We blow up their bridges. We're taxed for that. Then we're taxed to rebuild their bridges. And our own bridges are falling down. And we have this national debt that's, right now, if you recently looked at the deficit, it's doing this. Revenues are going down, and the spending continues. This week we're working on a budget in Washington. We want the executive branch, the Republicans want more money for this warfare state, more money for the military-industrial complex. The Democrats want more money for welfare. That's the problem. But they say they don't work together in Washington. That is not true. They work together very well. They've come up with a neat little compromise. They're going to increase both. It makes no sense. We got to look to our traditions. We got to understand what this country is all about. We got to live within the rule of law. We shouldn't go to war unless the war is declared. Then we should all be behind it, fight it, win it, and get it over with and come home. But instead, we have these perpetual, endless political wars. We go to war under UN resolutions, and they never end. And unfortunately, it will end badly unless we get control of things, get control of our government. And it's not that this is a radical idea. This is a traditional American idea emphasizing the importance of liberty, the importance of understanding that you have the incentive and the motivation to go out and work. You have a right to your life. You have a right to your liberty. We ought to have the right to keep the fruits of our labor, and that's where capital comes from. Capital can't come out of a computer by the Federal Reserve, and that's what we do. We don't save money. Savings have to be the source of true capital. That's where you get the correct information to have a booming economy. So we do, in spite of the prosperity today, we face serious troubles because our prosperity today is like if your banker was generous and loaned you $1 million a month to consume, and he never called your loan until after 3 years. Your standard of living would be very high, but when your notes are called and he quits loaning you money, you have to live below that standard of living. You have to go back to work and pay the bills. And that is what we're moving into. We're going to have to pay the bills. The answers are easily found, and they're wonderful, and they're American, they're very conservative, they're constitutional. If we do them, believe me, if we had this system of government, this system of foreign policy, it wouldn't take us long. I think we'd all go back to work. Even if the bills had to be paid and our standard of living would go down, I would say it wouldn't take long. We'd be back to work and we'd be over in a year or so. But right now, the standard of living is going down. Unfortunately, it's for the people that we're pretending to help the most, and that's the poor and the middle class. So my vote is for freedom. And the message is clear. And I hope that the support that we're getting is a reflection not so much about me. It's not about me as much as it is about this message and the need for it to be heard. So I am continuing with this message, and I cannot tell you exactly what will happen in this campaign or in the election. But I do know that if we continue on our same course that we're going to have devastating problems. I am excited about it, because there have been so many. I am especially excited about the young people willing to look at this and say, this is a grand idea, and this is what we need to do. The vote for me is a vote for freedom. Thank you very much.
The Congressman will take questions from the audience. We just ask that you wait until the microphones get to you before you ask the question. Thank you.
And I have thought that it's really exciting and interesting how much the generation that I belong to has really got into your message. And I wanted to take a second and ask you about, I know that you talked about no first strike.
About what?
No first strike with...
Oh, no first strike, right?
And under the Constitution, I was wondering if you would actually talk a little bit about the connection between nuclear power and nuclear weapons proliferation and the ideas behind that, because with the Non-Proliferation Treaty of '68, we said that other countries can have peaceful atom, using it for nuclear power, but also with that enrichment process, it brings you that many steps closer to having a nuclear weapon. And I was just wondering if you could do that.
Okay.
And also, sign the egg because everybody here wants one.
Okay. Yes, I did make the statement that we should have no first strike, matter of fact, no first strike nuclear or conventional weapons, because it doesn't make any sense. A president has a responsibility to, retaliate against an attack. I don't think there's been a good example of a need to do that throughout our whole history. But it was especially true in the early years that if Congress was way off and they had to come by horse and buggy, the president had the responsibility, the moral and the legal responsibility to thwart an attack on the United States. That still is the position I would hold. But that's quite different than starting a war. So I would say no first strikes. It should be done with a declaration of war, and not with the Congress reneging on their responsibility by transferring this power to the president, which Congress did, and just said to the president, if you feel like it, do it. If you don't, you don't have to. But if you do it, we'll pay for it. And it was the worst of circumstances. So although I'm critical of the administration for taking us to war, I'm almost more critical of the Congress for reneging on their responsibilities, because Congress should have stood up to it and said, we either declare a war or not. Matter of fact, I made our International Relations Committee vote on a declaration of war. Nobody voted for it, including myself, but they didn't want that responsibility. On nuclear power, I support nuclear power. I think it's very good. I think it's clean and it's safe compared to the others, and yet I want the government as far away removed from nuclear power. I would like to have seen a lot more development. Because of the restrictions, they haven't been able to develop. But the Non-Proliferation Treaty is something that is in existence, and we have severely bent the rules on that and have not followed them as we should. Matter of fact, Iran has been a better follower of the Non-Proliferation Treaty than we have been, and because we would never expose ourselves to what we expect other countries to do. But they do. They have an established international right to enrich for peaceful purposes. And now that our own government, as well as the UN inspector, said that they have not worked on a weapon since 2003, they're really within the international law. And that is sad. So if there is an international agreement that they're not going to continue the process and enrichment to produce nuclear weapons, I think they should be allowed to. So we have literally violated that treaty and imposed it on them, and unfortunately the demagogue Ahmadinejad has made it easier for us to get away with that, but he's a loudmouth, and he's going to have trouble getting reelected, and really doesn't speak for the people because the mullahs really run the show over there. So there's a distortion there. But the truth is they do have the right under the treaty to pursue this, and yet we tell them you absolutely do not have this right, and that is not true. We're violating the treaty when we tell them that.
There was a long article in the New York Times yesterday basically attributing the housing mess that we're in right now to Alan Greenspan around the 2001-2002 time period. What's your position? Do you think that Greenspan could have done more to get us out of this housing bubble? And as a follow-up on that, do you think that this is going to put the country into, many people believe that we're in recession already. Many economists believe that we're heading for a recession perhaps within the next 6 months. Do you believe that that's true, and how deep of a recession do you think that this country is facing?
Yes, I think we're in the early stages. If you're in the housing business or the mortgage business dealing with that, you might feel like you're in a depression. And if you're losing your house, you're in a depression. But nationally, and the statistics will eventually catch up, I think we will have one, because all monetary inflations, periods of monetary inflation, always leads to a recession or depression. And it's just a matter of time. You never know the timing. But the longer you go without a correction, the worse the correction is. And the more interference you do with the correction, the market always wants to liquidate that. Governments and politicians don't want to, and that was our problem in the